In our episode today, a young woman goes hitchhiking on a Florida highway to meet up with her dad, but vanishes into thin air. The strongest lead comes from a member of a biker gang, claiming he bought her as a slave from another biker group, only to later recant his whole story. But years later, out of nowhere, another private investigator from several states away gets a new lead that has striking similarities. Best of all, the details she learns provide hope that she very much might still be alive. A teenage woman named Amy comes home from school one afternoon and calls her father to ask if she can come by and borrow some money. She made plans to meet her friends for lunch at the local neighborhood grill. Her father's work was only a mile away, however Amy never made it to her dad's office, or to meet her friends for lunch. She just vanished into thin air. When the investigation started, the only real lead came from a construction worker who saw Amy trying to hitchhike down the main highway. But unfortunately, there were no other leads. 2 weeks later, 250 miles away, a couple walking next to a turnpike ramp found a camera with Amy's name on it. The only problem, investigators could not determine when she might have lost the camera. The film inside the camera only had 4 undeveloped photographs inside of it. 3 of them were overexposed. The 4th photo featured a vine-covered scene with a white pickup truck in the background. No one in Amy's family could identify any elements within the photograph, including the truck. At that point, the investigation went cold. Amy's mother decided to hire a private investigator. That investigation yielded several good leads. They all pointed to a motorcycle gang abducting Amy from the highway. But nothing would get them any closer to finding Amy. Right as the investigator was about to close the case, he received a call for a random woman named Susan. She claimed that she saw Amy at some motorcycle gang party in Florida. She went on to say that Amy was being referred to as a biker sex slave. This made the lead seem very much real. A week later, Amy's mother decided to take a trip down to that area where this party took place. She began showing her photograph to many of the locals. Several people did remember seeing her running around with the biker members. This one convenience store worker said that he remembered Amy buying vegetable soup for her vegetarian diet. At that point, she was convinced that her daughter had definitely been there. A year later, the local newspaper ran a story called Amy, the Missing Girl. The story was written to keep the awareness on Amy's case active. A day after the story ran, Amy's mom received a call out of the blue from a man named Paul. He told her that he was a former biker and recognized her daughter from the picture. He also said he had purchased Amy, for himself, from another biker gang. This story seemed to line up with all the previous leads. He also said that he only took possession of Amy for 3 months and then he let her run away with one of his friends. Amy's mother asked him if he had any idea where they may have gone. He claimed that he never heard from either one of them again. The most shocking part of this conversation was how Paul mentioned a particular scar on Amy's lower body. No one could have known that detail. Her mother never mentioned that scar to detectives. Paul offered to help locate Amy, but all he ended up doing was taking the woman on a wild goose chase. And then, in a more bizarre move, Paul abruptly tells Amy's mom that he made up the whole story. Until Amy's mother received a strange new lead from a private investigator in Virginia. She told her that she was contacted by a lady living in another country. This lady had a strange encounter with an American biker who was trying to arrange a sale of some woman. Strangely enough, the woman's description sounded exactly like Amy. He even mentioned Amy's hometown and her birthplace. While this lead sounded hopeful, this woman never saw the picture, and the biker just disappeared. Detectives immediately worked with foreign investigators, but all follow-up leads turned up empty. The trail finally ended 3 years later, when a biker's wife claims her husband made a deathbed confession. He said he witnessed Amy's death at a biker party the same day she disappeared. He said that Amy got so high on drugs that she mouthed off to several bikers, who assaulted her. She tried defending herself, however she was eventually killed. The bikers then disposed of her body in the swamp. Alligators would destroy any trace of evidence. While his story sounded believable, it was fraught with skepticism due to the fact this woman was paid by a documentary producer to tell her story. Several years later, Amy's mom would pass away, and many of the investigators are still holding on to that confession as the answer to what happened to Amy. But we may never really know what happened to her on the afternoon she disappeared. One thing is for sure, her mother always held on to the hope she might still be alive.
Today's story is about a 14-year-old girl who goes missing and is found 5 years later, alive and unharmed. The details of her disappearance is both shocking and tragic.
Before we continue with our story, if you enjoy true crime, dark, strange and mysterious stories, you've come to the right place. We upload at least once a week. Please, like and subscribe to our channel, and turn on all notifications, so you'll never miss new content.
This story takes place in the community of Rockhampton, in Queensland, Australia. On August 31, 1998, 14-year-old Natasha Ryan was dropped off to school by her mother. Her mother ran a few errands, then returned home. Shortly after returning, she received a phone call from the school informing her that Natasha was absent and wanted to know if she was ill. Natasha's mother, Jenny, told the school she had dropped her off in front of the school about an hour ago. In the month before she went missing, Natasha had run away from home once, aided by her 21-year-old boyfriend, Scott Black. In that incident, she was found 2 days later. Scott was arrested and fined $1,000 for willful obstruction of police. Scott claimed he helped Natasha because she had threatened to kill herself. Natasha was a troubled teen who had been suspended from school. She had also experimented with a variety of drugs, and had cut her wrists on one occasion, and had been receiving counseling. Natasha's disappearance came about the time of several disappearances of women and girls in Rockhampton who were found to be victims of a serial killer, known as the Rockhampton rapist. Authorities, believing Natasha had fallen victim to Fraser, conducted an extensive search including 100 local, state and emergency service volunteers. No trace of Natasha was found. Natasha's family eventually accepted that she was dead, and held a memorial service on May 9, 2001, Natasha's 17th birthday. Leonard Fraser was serving a life sentence for the abduction, rape, and murder of 9-year-old Kira Steinhardt. Fraser confessed to 5 murders, including Natasha's. After making a deal with police, he would serve his time segregated from the general population. On April 11, 2003, it was revealed that police had conducted a raid on a house in North Rockhampton and found Natasha, alive and well, hiding in a closet. She had been living with her boyfriend Scott for nearly 5 years. The April 11th trial of Leonard Fraser was in progress when prosecutor Paul Rutledge announced that Fraser was not guilty of the murder of Natasha Ryan. In fact, she had been found alive and unharmed. 20 days later, Natasha was in court, answering questions regarding her disappearance. She told the court she had never met Fraser and was unaware that witnesses had seen her with him. A jury found Fraser guilty of the murders of 3 local women. He was sentenced to 3 life terms. Leonard Fraser died of a heart attack in prison on January 1, 2007. Natasha would live in the dark, with the curtains drawn, and would remain out of sight. She later revealed she would sometimes crouch on the floor of a van for the 3-minute drive to the coast. They would go for a midnight swim and take long walks on the beach. Natasha said she only hid in the closet when visitors came by. Scott Black was sentenced to 3 years in prison and fined $3,000 and ordered to pay $16,000 towards investigation costs. Scott was released after serving only 12 months. Natasha was found guilty of causing a false police investigation and paid a small fine. For the exclusive rights to their story, Natasha and Scott signed a $120,000 contract. In 2008, the couple married in front of 35 guests. They reportedly sold their exclusive wedding photos to Woman's Day magazine for $200,000. The couple haven't been in the news since 2011. With no traceable social media profiles, no newspaper articles or magazine deals, Natasha and Scott have retreated from the limelight with their children, creating new lives without the girl in the cupboard label they profited off of for so long.